You guys should go home tonight, thank your parents, because they are taking their time, their financial resources to bring you here. And so that's something that you guys shouldn't take lightly. The memories you're going to make here, and also the bonds you're going to create and the people you're going to meet through this organization are going to be valuable tools the rest of your life. You know, I didn't go to college, unfortunately. I got out of high school and I just went to it and started working. But what I will tell you guys is that you have an opportunity that's tremendous before you. And if you have a dream in mind, you can do it. Anything your mind can conceive, you can achieve. It's very simple. But you have to be disciplined and you have to want it. So that's pretty much it, you know, on the character part. And you know, as I said earlier, you know, I started cleaning cars, and when I graduated high school, I had enough money saved to buy my first single-family lot. I always wanted to be a builder. Single-family home builder is what I wanted to be. And I graduated high school. I was still cleaning cars at the time. And I bought my first lot in the city of Warren. It was on 11 Mile Road. And I had $40,000 saved as a young man. And that was a lot of money back then, right? It was saving and, you know, working hard and things of that sort. And I needed $40,000 more. Well, we didn't have it as a family. And so I would go to a bank. Here it was, I was my first year out of high school, and I'm trying to get this money, going around to banks saying, hey, you know, I'm Tony Gallo, I'm starting a business, I would like to, you know, get a loan. No one would give me a loan. First comment they would make is, well, you have no credit. Well, of course I have no credit. You know, I was just in high school, and, you know, I'm just starting out. So jumping now to my dad, my family, my dad was cutting a guy's hair one day. And my dad was on the phone with me, and he had said, you know, Tony, how'd you do with the loan? And I explained to him, you know, I was denied and I didn't get the loan. And the gentleman sitting in the chair, he said, Frank, he said, who is that? He goes, that's my son. He goes, you guys live at 13 Shaner? He said, yeah. He says, your son, the kid that's always out cleaning cars, you know, day in and day out after hours? He says, yeah. And he says, well, you know what? He says, I'll give him the money. He said, I'm a banker at First State Bank. And so my dad called me. He says, Tony, I got you the $40,000. Well, meanwhile, these banks want what's called collateral. So my mother and father had to put their family home on the line as collateral for my $40,000 loan. And they did that without hesitation because of the love and the belief they had in me. And that's how I got started, right? I started with that first loan. I built the first home and paid back the lender. The second round, I met with the lender and said, look, no more mom and dad, it's just me. No more, you know, collateral from my parents. And that's really how I started my business. So I started building single family homes, and from there we started building car washes because I had a background in the car wash business. I had always been detailing cars and things of that sort. And in our career, I was building car washes, and then a lot of times we would sell the car wash when we were done. So we would get someone that wanted to be in that business that maybe didn't know how to build the car wash, and we would operate it for a period of time, and then I would sell it. And we did that in many, many instances. And then from there, I went on to buy shopping centers, you know, retail shopping centers. A lot of them were distressed. It was a time in 2008, 2009, 2010, when the economy was really tough back then. And it was a time that, you know, America really didn't know, were we coming back, right? It was, as we all remember, it was a very difficult time. But I was able to buy a lot of shopping centers through that time. And then in 2020 of this year, you know, recently, I got into the apartment business. You know, when I started that business, I said to myself, you know, jumping back to these goals, what does it look like 5 years from now? So I started in 2020, and today is 2025, and I said I'm going to have 1,000 units that I want to build, right, between that time frame. And with goals, again, we talked about earlier, we will have accomplished that by the end of this year. We'll be over that number by the end of 2025. And, you know, jump into these goals. When you have something in your mind, right, you don't think about it every day because it's in your mind. But if you reduce it to writing, here are my goals. You write them down. If you got 5, 10 goals, whether it's a personal goal, whether it's a business goal, whether it's a school goal, write those down and read them. Read them out loud in the morning. Read them out loud at night. And that will, you know, affirm your commitment to those goals. I don't know if this is off again. I was going to show you a project that we're working now on, and I'm going to explain to you the approval process as he brings that up. So, looking at, I'll just give an example of an apartment complex, right, of building a new project. So there's thousands of decisions you make from the time you identify a piece of property to the time that customer, your tenant, which is a customer, moves into your space. Thousands of decisions you make. The first is, when you find the land, is it zoned appropriately? Right? So we look at the zoning laws and the codes and the ordinances of the city or the municipality in which you're working in, right? And you have to go before what's called the Planning Commission. They're normally the recommending body to City Council or Township Board of Trustees. You make your presentation, you create your plans. Once those plans are created and you turn them into the city, it takes months and months. It might take you 60 days to get on an agenda. There's a public hearing, and then the public can come, right? So you might have a neighbor that's saying, I don't want apartments in my backyard. I don't want a commercial building in my backyard. You have to overcome that, and you have to work with them, as the community, right? As your neighbor. And some are making good points, but most people are just really not subject to change. They don't really want to see change. And so that's something that we have to overcome. This is a project that we just broke ground on. It's a 190-unit apartment building. This is at 16 in Van Dyke next to the MJR movie theater. And it will be a 3-story product, mostly brick, all individual units. And the parcel is this parcel here that we purchased. It's a 10-acre parcel. There's a 40,000 square foot building here. And then we really used this land is really what I was interested in order to build the apartments. And it took me about 2 years to buy the land because I had to convince the person that owned it that I was the right buyer, right? Like, they have a choice. Who they're going to sell to, and is the person buying going to perform? What I mean by are they going to perform is when I get that project and that land under contract, am I going to sit on my hands? Some buyers do. Some buyers don't really get the ball rolling. You have to, get moving and get to the city. So these are the different views of the project itself. There'll be a leasing office. There'll be a community center. Little park here in the middle for common area. Little grilling area for the kids to play in the courtyards. This is just the color package. This project will take, when we break ground, it'll take probably about 18 months to complete. The time we broke ground to the time that we start, inviting customers into the building. So with that being said, does anybody have any questions, comments? We'll kind of open it up for any questions that you may have, or yes.
So how do you know what land's the best to buy? Depending on if there's a bunch of different pieces of land per se.
So, well, in the example of an apartment complex, you want to be somewhere where people are working nearby. You want to be somewhere that is a dense area with a lot of population. And the biggest thing is you want to make sure that the property you're looking at is zoned appropriately for what you want to do. So, for example, you wouldn't be looking at an industrial property for single-family residential. So that's the biggest thing, is make sure that it's zoned appropriately for what you're wanting to develop there.
How do you come across the area that you want to invest in? How did you find this place, for example, the piece of land?
Just through our different sources. We look online. We look, in different, CoStar, LoopNet, these different listing factors. I had known about this property for some time because I have some other properties in the area. We have another project just half of a mile away from this site, so I always knew of the property. It was available, but the challenge was the zoning. We did have to go in and get certain variances, but that's what we look for, is really, as I said earlier, areas that are, we're building new product, and the product we're building is really tailored to the blue-collar community. That's really what I've served my whole life, because that's really what I am, right? That's who I am, is blue-collar, and we serve the masses. So we're building product right now, and we're delivering rents anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500 a month. And quite honestly, $1,500 rent is affordable today. Most guys who are building these are $3,000, $4,000, or $5,000 rents per month. So we're still trying to keep those working people in mind. Yes?
Do you have multiple projects like this at once, or is it like a one at a time thing?
No, we do. We have multiple projects. I'll show you the other two that we're starting as well. But we do try and have multiple projects. It's really a juggling act because, again, on those approvals, you know, the other project that I'm going to show you in a moment, we were denied on that project 2 years ago. So we went back to the drawing board, politically, again, talking about meeting with neighbors, trying to revive it. Sometimes you have to go back 2, 3 times to these communities to get them approved. Come. Yep, right here in front.
Oh, so what would you say is a good cost per unit to rent ratio?
In terms of the cost of,
Like you pay 100 grand per unit
yep.
to rent. What's a good ratio for that?
So our unit costs are about $165 each unit, and that's what we're leasing them for at this point. So that's what our actual costs. And the appraised value comes out on those about $260, $270 per unit.
Okay.
So there is equity built in once we're building those. Go ahead.
So is all you do now is apartment complexes, or are you
No.
still in like the shopping center?
We still have shopping centers. I think that the way I see our company going here in the future is more multifamily. Shopping centers are great, retailers are great, but that business model has also changed, right?
Yeah.
Every one of us in here, when we need something, where do we go? We go online, right? And so years ago, when I was growing up, or when your parents were growing up, we would go to a mall, or we would go to a retailer and try our clothing on. Today, it's much different. You just go online. So that particular business model of the older shopping centers or retail shopping centers, it's still there, but I think more on specialty items. So, you know, the way I see ourselves is entering more into the multifamily.
So let's say you're building like a single family home.
Yep.
How much like liquid cash do you need for that? Just like on average.
Well, it depends on the type of home you're building, of course. Today, you know, the banks generally will give you, you know, like a 60 to 80% loan to value. So for example, just for sake of discussion, let's say the home's going to appraise at $100,000. A bank will give you $60,000 to $80,000. So you need the balance of that in liquidity. Anybody else? Question? Yes, Brady.
So like, you know, like this is a big investment building all these apartments, complexes and stuff. How long does it take until you get like your return on your investment really, if you think about that way?
I mean, it takes many years, obviously, to recoup all of it, but you know, you're really based on volume and cash flow, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're taking a little bit from each of the units, and that's, you know, cash flow.
Yeah.
And every month you're paying down debt, right? At least if you have an amortizing loan, which is, you know, principal and interest payment, every month you're paying that principal down.
And so like apartments are like slower.
Pardon?
Apartments are like slower return on investment than.
Yeah, I would say that it's more consistent and it's more long-term, yes.
Okay.
Go ahead, AJ.
When you make profit, would you put that profit into like another project, or would you put it like into the stock market?
Yeah, we reinvest, you know, because I am a first-generation company, everything, and we don't have any partners. So that's another thing. There, you know, another way to invest is with syndication and, you know, investment from other partners. The way I run it, my company, is everything we're making, we do put back into new projects.
So like, when you're talking about the, you know, the zoning and going in front of the board and having to get variances and stuff like that, are you like, is there a process to avoid just sitting on the property and taking a loss and, you know, just having property taxes and stuff collect, like, while you're trying to get that stuff done? Or are you just basically?
Well, on vacant land, I mean, normally what you're doing is, if you own the land, of course, there is a holding cost, right?
Yeah.
Taxes, insurance, maintenance. But generally, as a developer, when you're buying a parcel of land, you don't close until you receive all your approvals.
Okay.
So you're getting it under contract, let's say for 180 days or 120 days, whatever the seller is willing to allow.
Got it.
And then once you receive all your approvals, then you break ground, you close on the property. Yep.
So, like for example, you said on your first purchase it was $80,000. So, like, what was the time span of like when you made all that money back?
Well, on single-family homes, it's a great business and it's a great way to make a lot of cash quickly. The problem with it, it's all taxable. It's ordinary income. Whereas when you have an investment property, or you have a apartment project or a commercial building, you can write that off over time. There's different depreciation methods in which you can use. But to answer your question, the very first home I bought, it was kind of a 40-40-40, right? I had 40, I needed 40, and I made 40. I sold that home for $120,000, but that was in 1992, right? Long time ago. It's very difficult today to build homes in the $100,000-$200,000 range. Today, affordable homes are $400,000 or $500,000, unfortunately. But the single-family building business is a very, very good way to make a lot of cash right away. But again, the only downfall, you're buying that product, right? You buy the land, you fight with the city, you fight with the neighbors to get it all approved. You sell the product, and now you're starting all over again. But again, great way to make a lot of cash to continue in other investments.
So what's like the approval process like?
The approval process, what is it like in terms of timing or political ways? What?
Like you're making a presentation with
Yes.
with your company?
Yes.
And then what, how long is that? And then how long does it take to get approved?
It's a very good question. So it depends on the project, and it depends on the controversial surroundings, right? As I said earlier, people really don't want change. So when you're developing in someone's backyard, they think that vacant land is theirs, right? It's been a vacant land, and this is my extended backyard. But generally, when you make an application, within 60 days, you can generally be placed on an agenda. Okay, and they place you on the city agenda. There's a public hearing. Generally, people within 300-foot radius are mailed a mailing to say there will be a public hearing based on explaining the project. And then that night, the planner will make their recommendation. They'll introduce the project, and then our company, or what's called the petitioner, who's the applicant, will make their presentation, kind of like we're talking right now, before a body, and they will have their plans, and they'll explain to them what they're doing. And that body can approve it, they can deny it, or they can table it. Sometimes they'll say, you know what, we don't have enough information to make a determination, so we're going to table you to the next agenda. So those are the ways. But I would tell you that, like this particular project here, it took about a year to get approved. About a year in terms of site plan approval all the way through permits. Because once you get your what's called site plan approval, it's not done there. Then you go to the building department, you turn in the plans for building. Then from there, you turn in your plans to the engineering department. And in many instances, if you're running like new sanitary lines, new water lines, new storm lines, that's what's called another whole agency, is called the DEQ, right? Which in terms of that's a state agency, federal agency that takes all kinds of times. Right now, their permits are taking about 6 months. So like in our case, we're able to start this project without those permits while we're waiting for those to become. Go ahead.
So for that whole, say, year process, when you're getting those things, you just sit on the land and work on other projects? Or is there anything you can do to the land?
Well, there is, yeah. Like in our case right now, we're moving dirt. So there's 40,000 yards of dirt that got to come out. So they're removing the dirt. They're going to start working on some of the storm water, some of the things that have shorter lead times. The building department will normally give you what's called a footing permit. So all of that takes time. Like it'll take a month to put footings in. It'll take 3-4 weeks to put all your underground plumbing, your underground electric, all the concrete slabs. So to answer your question, during the time in which you're down, you're hoping that you can do other things. Demolition in this case, we're doing some demolition of the building next door. So we are able to work while we're waiting for those final permits. Dario.
What would you say is your favorite way of business, like residential?
My favorite way of business, I would tell you right now, is the apartments. It's something I always wanted to do in my career, and